Today, it is time someone finally laid down the whole Animation VS Animator lore. From clone stick figures to the mysterious programmer O21, there is a lot to talk about. If you haven't watched the show, I heavily recommend watching it before this video, as it's really good and I'm going to spoil everything. But if you're still watching, I assume you know what we're talking about. So, let's get straight into it. This is going to be mostly pretty basic information for anyone who watched the show, but it's important to explain it all to understand what comes next, so pay attention! For now, we'll focus on the regular stick figures. We will talk about Alan's stick figures later because they're a special case. Alright, first of all, a stick figure is drawn by a human. There is, for now, no other way to create stick figures. Even the Second Coming's drawing of stick figures don't seem to have a real conscience and only obey to their creator. Second, this drawing is uploaded from a computer to the internet. There, computers are represented by these big blue boxes with tubes linking them to sites they interacted with. While being uploaded, stick figures travel through these links as green life particles. When being uploaded to a site, they materialize as a post. In Victim, we are shown Newgrounds a lot, but we can see other sites in the background like Reddit or y8.com? Huh? Anyways, after a part of them materializes on the site, their green life particles travel away to what the fandom calls the OUTernet, which is how I'm gonna call it as well, since we don't have an official name. It's the place where the stick figure civilization lives. Once there, they finally materializes as their real form and go on to live their lives. A few notes. It seems that when the character's post is damaged, they are teleported away from the OUTernet back to their post. That was pretty confusing at first to me, but if you look closely, you can see that there is only one link between the OUTernet and Newgrounds. I think this means that stick figures are still somewhat connected to Newgrounds, and when it was attacked, it disconnected them away from the OUTernet and brought them to their post as a default place. It is also worth noting that multiple characters can be linked to the same post, like Purple and their parents and these two guys over there. Finally, stick figures can die if they receive too much damage. In the 30 million subscriber Q&A, Alan said that when a stick figure dies,
their code is still there, it's just not put together. It's been disconnected from the dimension. It would be impossible for someone to just take that code and, I mean, unless you're the Second Coming, to take their code and put it back together.
So, to everyone hoping to see Mitzi or Gold get revived, the chances are very slim. The only possible canon way to revive a character is the Second Coming using his powers. However, Alan mentioned that the stick figures have their code still there, but just broken when they die. This leaves possibilities in the future for someone else to discover another way to fix that code. These are just my thoughts, though. Alright, now we're getting into the real stuff. Let's talk about the stick figures surrounding. The internet is mostly a giant void resembling a night sky, where each star would be a computer or a website. On the outside, computers are represented by these boxes, linked to other websites. On the inside, there is a screen, which looks different to a human and to a stickman. Indeed, humans are limited by the format of the real screen their computer uses. But for stick figures, they seem to be able to wander away from these restrictions. Although the top of the screen seems to be a hard limit, as we see Victim breaking out of it. It's not clear whether Minecraft enhances the length at which a stickman can wander off the original screen, or if that length was already there. But stick figures can use Minecraft to go as far as to go to other computers. Now, that's pretty interesting, because the only other way we saw another stick figure go from one computer to another was Victim using the links between computers to crash into Grace's computer. The other stick figures always have to use the Nether to travel to other devices. Excluding that one time Orange and Red glitched out of Purple's trap, because it's a very specific case. So, that would mean that Minecraft's nether portals can act as substitute for these links and allow stick figures to travel from one device to another, like how Blue and Green joined Purple's iPad and even King going from the stick figure civilization to Minecraft. The way Minecraft interacts with stick figures surrounding is pretty interesting because they don't seem to be actually playing the game. In the Bed Wars episode, you can see them joining a server, which they never do in any other episodes. In fact, this seems to be Alan's account, as we can see the Alan Becker Minecraft server in there. So, I believe that Minecraft affects the computer and turns it into a Minecraft-like world. We can, for example, see a Stickfigure break the taskbar and it acts like a Minecraft block. You could say that they are in a single-player world, however, this wouldn't explain how they joined Purple's world, since a single-player world is, single-player. So, I believe that ever since they interacted with the Minecraft icon, the computer has been somewhat Minecraftified, if that makes sense. The further away they go from the computer screen, the more Minecraft it becomes, which is the same for every device and allows the Stickfigure to join each other by traveling long distances in Minecraft. Nether portals making traveling faster, this explains why nether portals are what is used to travel between devices. Now, if we go back to the internet as a whole, computers aren't the only thing in this void. There are also websites, which are represented by these giant spheres. There are two ways to access a website. Either by entering a website directly into a computer's search engine or by traveling through the links in the internet to access it. However, both of these ways have important differences. When accessing a website through a search engine, any damage done to that website can be nulled by simply refreshing the page. YouTube being destroyed and even the color game was able to be revived in episode 4 since they came from the website stickfight.com, thanks to Alan refreshing the page. Anything a user or Stickfigure does that would harm a website only harm it on their end and thus can be cancelled. It's just like when you mess around with a website using Ctrl-Shift-C to make it say silly things and then refreshing the page removes it all. However, for the real site, However, for the actual real site, every changes seem to stay. When the Dark Lord and the Second Coming, when the Dark Lord and with the Chosen One attacked Newgrounds, Drawing actually lost their lives and were hurt, and I heavily doubt Mitzi can be revived with a simple click. Well, at least if it could, it would be extremely anticlimactic, so I'm trying to assume it wouldn't work. So, it's as if there was a base site and that every time someone accessed it through their computer, they were opening a copy for themselves. Now, if I'm right, and that there is that big of a difference between the base site and the copy you can open, then I'm a bit confused about the color gang. They come from stickfight.com, but accessed Alan's computer through a copy he opened. So, this can mean one of two things. One, they know when a copy of their site is opened and can travel from the base site to the copy to go to the computer that opened it. 2. The color gang we know is a copy of the real color gang existing on the base site. While I think the first idea is way more likely, it would be absolutely crazy if the second one was right. That would just shatter everything we knew about the Second Coming's friends and could make for an interesting arc if done right. Like them meeting their real counterparts? Would they even have any memory of Second Coming and Alan? I don't know, but that's just a theory. Talking about copies of Stickfigures, can we talk about victims' workers for a second? Why are they all exactly the same? One could say it's just an aesthetic choice to not draw attention away from the main characters and that this has nothing to do with the plot. But I like making crazy theories, so I will kindly disregard that. We can see that Victim is a very smart individual and has created some very advanced technology. The device to read memories, for example, is actually pretty insane. However, we can see in Victim that Rocket Corp, Victim's company, has been losing money since some time. And we can also see that Victim is looking for workers and soldiers, but in the box, we can see that Rocket Corp is doing good in terms of money, and they have tons of workers again. So what happened? Well, it's possible that Victim created the device to create copies of his own workers. Maybe he used that grey guy because he was the one who showed him information about Alan, or maybe he was the only one left, who knows. Whether or not the original is still alive or if he has been split into multiple copies of himself is unknown, but it would make some amount of sense for Victim to do that. Like, he could be looking for a way to bring Misty back and found a way to clone people down the road instead. I don't know. Okay, I'll stop with this crazy theory for now, and instead let's go back on track and talk about the final piece. Because at the bottom of all of this world, there is the OUTernet. The OUTernet is something different than everything we talked about before, because it does not seem to be either a website or a computer, and used to not even be linked to anything at all. It looks like a giant space with forests, plains, and cities. This seems to be a flat world with probable barriers at the borders. Even though these aren't shown, we can see in this poster the shape of their world. Stickfigures appeared in the OUTernet upon being uploaded. They went on to live their life with no worries or knowledge of anything outside. All until Alan Becker started messing with his stickfigures. When Victim escaped in his rocket and crashed into Newgrounds, he then got dragged by mid-seas life particles toward the OUTernet, and, for the first time, something solid burst into its shell. That shock created links between the OUTernet and all of the computers that had created the stickfigures and uploaded it. This connection appeared into the OUTernet sky, making a map of what our Earth looks like, made up of tiny squares that represents each person's computer, which is the sky that the OUTernet currently has. We can see something interesting in this poster, and first of all, I want to thank the Twitter user _z, who deciphered most of the text. Big shout out to them, their link is in the description. This poster specifically talks about sky tiles and green life particles, showing that the stickfigures have knowledge of these two things existing. They do not seem to fully understand it though, as they only talk about it affecting weather and do not mention the fact that they are links to computers. And if you think about it, without Victim, there would be no connection between computers and the OUTernet at all. Alan's computer would have never been linked to the OUTernet. Without that link, the Chosen One and the Dark Lord would have never been able to reach the OUTernet. It would have been way harder for the Dark Lord to send a virus to Alan, and it would have been impossible to use the sky to reach his computer like Chosen does. I believe that without Victim, the events in the showdown would have never happened, and Animation vs Animator would have ended after episode 4. Thankfully, for us, it didn't, and we got to enjoy some of the coolest episodes in all of Alan Becker's series. Alright, so remember when I explained how stickfigures are created and how they work? Scratch that, because we are going to talk about Alan Becker's stickfigures. As you may have noticed, none of Alan's stickfigures have been uploaded to the internet, but they still come to life. How? Well, here's my theory. If we go back to the second episode of Animation vs Animator, we can see Alan talking with a guy called Programmer 021. This guy seems to immediately know what Alan is talking about when he mentions stickfigures attacking his computer, and even talk about stickfigures level. What I believe is happening is that Programmer has given something to Alan, either just an explanation or a full-fledged program, to immediately make his stickfigures come to life without having to upload them. It seems to happen when he turns them into symbols and names them, even though this is a bit unclear for Second Coming. Very simply put, a symbol is a term in animation for an image or animation that you can reuse multiple times. If I had drawn Victim once and converted it to symbol, I could later reuse that symbol to have Victim already drawn. If you edit a symbol, every instance of that symbol being used is affected by the changes you made. This explains why Victim remembers everything Alan did to him every time he is drawn again, since every instance of himself is the same. Since Programmer talks about levels, I believe the name of the symbol affects its strength. Victim having no powers and Chosen One basically having all the powers. We can see Alan hesitating between names for Chosen, Killer, Beast, and of course Chosen One, though there are also possibilities for a set stickfigures level hierarchy, with the Victim being close to the bottom and Chosen One being at the top. We can also see that you can give missions to stickfigures created this way, like with the Dark Lord. However, it seems that upon failing that mission, it stopped affecting him. With all of that being said, this means that more special stickfigures like Alan's could exist. Maybe we have already seen some of them. After all, we don't know yet where some of Victim's agents come from. they do all seem to have special abilities that aren't seen in any other stick figures. Pixel Guy being able to transform part of his body, the one that looks like a cave drawing can turn into a more dangerous form, and the signal sign guy has been seen using electricity. What's more interesting to know now is, where do they come from? But I sadly don't have an answer yet. We need to wait for more episodes to come. I hope we'll get an episode on programmer O21 one day too. He could have been even more important than we thought. With him knowing so much about stick figures, it's possible he could even be the reason that all stick figures are alive in the first place. But that's really just a theory I have. Let me know what you think. What are your theories? Did I miss or mess up anything? Is there anything you agree or disagree with? I read all of my comments, and if I realize I missed some important stuff, I'll make a part 2 to correct it all. But anyways, that's enough madness for today. See you later.